Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here. This one yet again based on one of your newer suggestions. I'm having a lot of fun with these videos, so I'll probably just keep on going for a little bit longer and then give this series a rest. This one has to do with a very bizarre cryptid that is located apparently there somewhere in Chile. It just goes to show that just when I thought we reached the weirdness level associated with cryptids, here comes another one to elevate things even further, and it has to do with something encountered in the 2000s. So as opposed to some of my past cryptids that took a long time back when it comes to the time period, here it's much more recent. So let's go ahead and let's talk about this mysterious and bizarre creature. It even has a very unique name associated with it. It's known as the Telepathic Football. I don't even think that's a name. I think that's more on the lines of a term, but you can see immediately how this stands out from some of the other names associated with other cryptids. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating information associated with this very bizarre cryptid. So what was this Telepathic Football? Well, as I mentioned, it happened in the 2000s, specifically in January 12, 2002, and it happened there at a location called Calama, Chile. In fact, if you wanted to go even more specific, it's at an area known as Villa San Rafael there in Calama, Chile. And the way it occurred is apparently two young boys encountered this very bizarre creature, just a one-off item, but they were able to discern so much information associated with it. And I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute. But yes, it just goes to show that with Chile, I haven't talked about some of the cryptids in the past there. In fact, it's been a while if I recall correctly, but it just goes to show again that there's always going to be another cryptid that pops up out of nowhere, no matter what part of the world you're located in. And imagine at this location, Villa San Rafael in Calama, Chile, which you're looking at here, like a more street picture associated with it, that as even something as rural as this location, something that's just pretty much out there in a place that you would never think would have cryptids, lo and behold, that's where you found this creature here. So here's how the story goes. I don't know if this occurred during the daytime or during the nighttime. I'm going to presuppose that it's during the daytime, considering the situations. So these two young boys were actually there in that location in Villa San Rafael, and apparently one of them noticed that their pet snake had escaped from their cage. The boys, by the way, went by the name of Jean, and then another one by the name of Nelson, and they were living there in that location. And then that's when one of their pet snakes ran away. And so they decided to look for it just around those areas, just around those neighborhoods. And then they went to an area that was considered a rubble, like someplace around a rubble location. I imagine that it was just a bunch of destroyed homes or something else along the lines of undeveloped homes. And they began looking for that pet snake for about half an hour or so. And then that's when they noticed that the dogs that were with them too, I don't know if these dogs actually were, let's say, their own dogs, or these were dogs that ended up following them as they were searching for their pet snake. They started to howl in a curious way, almost in like a crying fashion. Like they sensed that something was up, that something was in the horizon that didn't sound right or didn't seem right. And so it gave an alert to the boys as to what would occur. And so when they started looking towards another location, they realized that they were not alone. About 30 meters away, that's when they saw what could be considered from far away a stray dog, at least based on a faraway description. In other words, they hadn't seen it up close as of yet. And so wanting to make sure that they weren't going to be attacked by this stray dog, they actually ended up taking some nearby rocks and throwing it at this creature. And then sure enough, that's when it definitely caught its attention at least. And so this creature did something very, very unique. It didn't run away. It didn't actually do anything. It just pretty much stood there, stand still in other words, and it just stared straight at them. That's got to be like a very eerie sensation, though, whenever you have an animal that naturally doesn't either run towards you or run away whenever you do something like that, like throwing rocks at them. Instead, they're almost like analyzing you or just looking beyond you in some cases, and then that's when it truly just creates a very unique situation. So they kind of got a little scared at this fact. The dogs that were with them, I imagine at that point they had run away because they didn't pop up within any other parts of the story. But yes, this creature then actually started coming towards them. And then as they saw it come closer, that's when they saw more descriptions of it. And clearly, this was something that was not a stray dog. In fact, this is how it looked like. And again, I was mentioning earlier, even though this was a one-off encounter, they definitely got a very good look to it. First off, they noticed this physical characteristic. The way it walked, it actually ended up walking 2 legs at a time. So I imagine like the left leg and the right legs were probably going in some kind of weird unison. Or maybe they were doing the front legs and the back legs in that weird unison. And then it was doing it in almost like a fashion involving short, small leaps. That's the way they described it. And then whenever it stopped at a certain point getting up to them, that's when it did another unique thing. It actually stood upright, just like a regular person would on its 2 legs. Now, that's not to say that dogs can't do that trick, but they definitely can't do it for a long time. Here, though, this creature, whatever it was, did so, and it did so perfectly, and it continued to stand on its 2 legs. And then the way they described it as far as its physical looks, it was like this. Its ears were large, flat, and round. It had these arms that were considered very short. They had elbows on them, and they had these 3 fingers on them as well. But the hair surrounding the entire body, including the arms and the legs, could be considered more on the lines of that coarse hair that you find on pigs. You know how pigs have that very rough hair associated with them. That's essentially what this was here. In fact, its legs ended up looking more along the lines of a goat than any other kind of creature. And then its head itself was considered large. It had a flat nose like a bulldog, but otherwise the rest of it looked like a largish dog, a large-ish type dog. And then its eyes had a very unique trait. They were slanted, but they were actually on the sides of the head itself. So if this creature ever had to look at something directly, it would have to do that weird thing that animals do, especially like those lizards do, where they turn from side to side to make sure that their eyes are looking directly at someone, but they can't do it all at the same time. And then the other thing that they noticed was that on its feet, it looked to have this membrane between its digits, almost like a duck would have, but it was considered not a duck-like foot, obviously, but it did have that weird covering associated with it. And then on the back of its back, it had this spinal section that had even thicker hair. Maybe this was something else, like a part of a defense mechanism, or maybe this was something where it was an alert. You know how some animals make certain parts of their hair stand up whenever they're on alert. Maybe this creature actually had something along those lines, but it was definitely thicker in that area than other parts of the animal itself. And then as far as the rest of it, the hair could be considered more on the lines of a grayish color, and then the tail had a very small white tip as well, and it appeared to be a little bit thicker than what another dog would be. So again, all of this was encountered in that very brief moment by these 2 boys, and they took that all in at the very, very same time. But then the creature did something else that was just way, way out there. When it was looking straight at them, and it was doing nothing, apparently, just looking straight at them, that's when the boys noticed that it was almost like a sensation coming into them. In fact, it was like an electric shock is how they described it. And it wasn't in their head, it was more along the lines in their stomach. Like they felt something was being emanated from this creature, and then it was going to them, and for whatever reason it was impacting their stomach. And not only that, but they also heard what sounded like a loud dragging noise now anytime this creature started to move forward. Apparently it did so just very, very slowly, but it made a very large dragging sound. And whenever they felt that electric shock, they stated that this thing apparently spoke to them. It apparently committed some kind of voice inside their head, and then get this, it said something along the lines of, "Don't stare, just run away." So imagine that. Imagine staring at something like this. It's staring back at you, and then you hear that voice inside your head giving you that demand, or giving you that command itself, is stating that don't stare, just run away. Clearly at this point the boys were going to do something like that, and the way I read the information, they didn't have any other type of encounter or any other situation associated with this creature. So they must have run at that point. They must have absolutely just turned tail and then gone away, and clearly they were not going to mess with this creature afterward. I wouldn't either. Seeing something like this, as bizarre as it was, and now all of a sudden it's inside your head, you don't definitely want to have any other kind of bad situation happening afterward. And so they decided to showcase this to, I guess, others that were there. Maybe it was family members, maybe it was friends, but the unique thing was both boys gave the very same story, even though they were telling it to different people. So there's always the idea that maybe they could have just trained each other into saying the same thing, memorizing whatever they were going to say, and then that way they could say it as close as possible, even if they're separate from each other. But if it's not a hoax, like if it's not something that they're lying about, then you have to consider again that they gave a very close encounter to separate people, but even though they weren't together like when they were doing so. So that definitely stands out on that end too. But that's pretty much it. There was nothing else associated with this creature. Once they decided to run away, then that was it. There was no other encounters apparently there in that location in Chile, there at the Villa San Rafael. And as far as I can tell, there's nothing else in other parts of the world considering this very unique creature. But if anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed, then please post those comments below. How about that? Anybody from the Calama, Chile area? Maybe even if we're lucky, anybody from Villa San Rafael. If you know about this story and you have more information associated with that there too, then please post those comments below. So, all right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.